As a woodworker, sometimes I just like to be entertained on YouTube and watch woodworking videos, especially woodworking tools. And sometimes there's stuff we want to build, but in those videos, we see every fest tool known to mankind, bandsaws, huge sanders, planers we don't have, and I'm here to tell you, you don't need all those tools. Over 7 years ago, I had 8 screws put in this shoulder. I had to go in for a 100,000 mile checkup. Creative director says I just had a screw loose. Since the dawn of time, all woodworkers ask themselves, do I have enough tools? The answer is no. I think there's 3 essential tools that every good workshop needs. Now in this video, we're going to talk about the main power tools that you need in the shop, not any hand tools. The tools that you're going to need might be different from mine. What you need is based on you, what kind of space you have, and of course, budget. In my years of experience, I've heard of the triad of tools, that being the table saw, bandsaw, and a planer joiner, which I don't have. For me, that's not the triad. For all the years I've been woodworking, I still don't have a planer joiner. And I just bought a bandsaw. So the 3 tools I'm most dependent on are, this was the first miter saw I ever bought, and it can do one thing, and that's cut miters. Back in the day, this thing was the bomb. 14-inch blade, you could put a miter in a 2x6 laying on edge. I rarely use this anymore. I actually put a composite blade on here, and I cut metal with it. That's not very often. A number of years ago, I replaced that old miter saw with this, a sliding compound miter saw. Goes this way. And if I had a good hand, I could tell you it does this too, which is great for doing crown molding. The big advantage in the new miter saws is the fact that they can slide, which allows you to cut wider parts. I had this on a mobile base originally, and I could take it from job to job, but now I've got this dedicated miter saw station. Having a dedicated fence with the stop block makes it easy for making repetitive parts, like rails and stiles for doors. My number 2 is a router, specifically a router table. I use my router table like a mini shaper. I make rails and stiles on it, and profiling small parts is much simpler on a router table. I like to cut dados because it makes a nice flat bottom. You can see here I use my flush trim bit quite a bit. When I first started, I just made my own fence out of MDF. This is pretty fancy, but it's not necessary. This is a nice to have. Need to have, nice to have. 1, 2, 3, 4, count the CNC, 5, and my pocket hole cutter has 2 routers in it, 6, 7. I have a fascination with routers. And number 1, table saw. And to conserve space, it's mounted in the same table as my router. You can rip with it, you can make a big panel sled and cut panels, and you can buy a molding head cutter. Comes in pretty handy. You can get dado sets. It's all over YouTube, the different sleds you can build, tenoning, cross-cutting, making crown molding. This is a pretty nice sled, had it for a long time. This was before YouTube, so I couldn't make my own, so I built one, or bought one. I've had my saw for well over 20 years. It's an old Delta contractor saw. It's not even a 3/4 horse. What saw should you buy? As much as you could afford. This is what I started with, skill saw. But now I do a lot of cabinets. I need a table saw. But back in the day when I started, there was no such thing as a track saw. And I still don't have a track saw. I borrowed this one. If I was just starting out, I think a track saw would actually be my number 1 purchase. It's much more versatile, rip cuts, cross cuts, pretty portable. And when I'm done borrowing this one, I'm gonna buy my own. This was a short video. Not doing a lot these days in the shop. So that's my 2 cents on what I think the 3 main power tools are in a woodworking shop. What are yours? So go ahead and watch those videos, and we'll see you next time.